Welcome. Jonathan Foust here, and I'm happy that you're here. I am at an undisclosed location. Well, I'll disclose it. I'm on Cape Cod right now, and I will be leading a short meditation, giving you a little intro to a talk called Riding the Wave, which I gave a little while ago, which it's a pretty good talk. So, to start off with, some announcements and some thank yous. A thank you to our producers, to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo. Thank you so much for all you do. For our mindful movement teacher for today, thank you as well. A reminder that mindful dialogue with Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy will not be happening. They're taking the summer off. Good for them. And you can get the links to Mindful Movement if you'd like to join on my Facebook page and on my website at jonathanfoust.com. There's a newsletter that I offer that offers a compendium of talks, all my best photos for the month, if you'd like to sign up for that. There's also a weekly, which tells you what's coming up. And finally, thank you so much for your support. This is all offered freely in the spirit of generosity, so no one's denied access to this. If you're inspired to support this and to support me in my lavish lifestyle, many, many thanks. I also forgot to mention a thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for being a sponsor, for helping to roll this out, and a shout out to my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, which had previously been the host of this class. A big thanks there as well. So, as we don't have that long, this will be approximately a 13-minute meditation. I thought we might explore some of the most powerful techniques for most quickly shifting your state. Has to do with attention, focus, and at the same time softening and relaxation. So if you like, let's begin. Reach your arms up overhead. Stretch up to the left side, to the right side. Let out any sounds, moans, screech, whatever you like. You're on mute. Adjust your posture in any way that might feel good for you. If you like, you can always do this wonderful transition of a slow motion release of the hands. Feel your hands as they're flowing through space. Let your eyes close and let this be kind of a symbolic act of moving from focusing on the outer world to making room for what arises in the inner world. And you might now, in your own time, just take a moment to pause. And what do you notice? What do you feel? You might now, if you like, you can follow my voice through this little way of moving inward. And if my voice doesn't work for you, please feel free to mute me or ignore me. But now you might like to deepen your breath just a little bit. And notice how just lengthening your inhalation has this tendency to call your awareness a little bit more to the here and now. And now for the next 3 inhalations, lengthen the in-breath, and on the out-breath, notice how much you can soften and relax and let go. Imagine each out-breath as a softening, and it's kind of a falling away. Or a falling inward, if you will. And now, if you would, bring your awareness to the inside of your mouth. Feel the inside of your mouth, feel the width, the length, and the volume of your tongue. Notice how the jaw could maybe soften a little bit further away from your skull. And over the next 3 exhalations now, notice what might soften, relax, or let go on the inside of the mouth, the tongue, and the jaw. Let your awareness now move into the shoulders and the arms, and You might like to imagine your arms like heavy drapes just hanging from your shoulders and sensing down through the elbows and down through the wrists. And again, for the next 3 exhalations now, how much more could you soften, relax, or let go on the breath out? And feel now from the inside the palms, backs of the hands, the volume of your thumbs and fingers. And over the next 3 rounds of breath, particularly with the exhalation, how much more now can you soften and feel? Let your attention now flow to the whole region of your lower back and extending down into the buttocks. And over the next 3 exhalations, how much more could you relax and soften and feel? Now, you may notice that there's a direct correlation between the intimacy to which you can relax and the intimacy to which you can feel. The more you relax, the more you feel. And so now, feel your navel and about, let's say, 2 inches below your navel and in toward the center of your torso. Sense if you can locate this point. And you might notice the subtlety of the breath here. And over the next few, or let's say 3 exhalations again, how much more could you relax and soften and feel? And feel now the weight and the volume and the length of your legs. The hip joints to the knees, knees to the ankles. And again, as you explore with the breath, over the next 3 exhalations, how much more can you relax from the inside out, softening and feeling? Now sensing the feet, the tops of the feet and the toes, the soles of the feet and the heels, the volume of your feet. Over the next 3 out-breaths, softening, relaxing, and feeling. Is it possible now to imagine the whole of the inner body, everything you can feel on the inside? And over the next 3 exhalations, how much can you soften, relax, and feel on the inside of the entire body? And you might now feel the movement of your breath, or perhaps the vibration of sound. Perhaps the feeling in the palms of the hands. And for the next minute or so, Let your primary focus be on either breath or sound or feeling, on the experience from the inside. Can you imagine this lens of the witness, or the seat of the witness, aware of everything that's changing without preference, without grasping or pushing away? Noticing what's happening and noticing if you can let things be just as they are. Relaxed and at the same time alert. And now for the next few minutes, or let's say the next minute, you might let go of any sense of doing and explore what it's like to simply rest in presence. Nothing to fix, nowhere to go, nothing to do. In the absence of effort, what do you feel and what do you notice on the inside? You might sense right now, over the next 3 exhalations, how much more could you relax or soften or let go? Notice the quality of presence. What has shifted for you in the last 12 or 13 minutes? You might very gently release all technique. Feel the space around you, the air touching the skin. You might begin to lengthen your breath a little bit. Let your head drift a little bit from left to right, just sensing the movement from the inside. And feel free to remain with your eyes closed. I'd like to offer just a few words before we begin our transition to the talk. You may notice when you slow down that different experiences come in waves. Emotions in particular have been described as waves. There's kind of this clench and then the arising and then the expression and then the receding. Learning how to ride the waves of change is one of the practices in meditation that develops equanimity, a sense of steadiness. And it applies directly to your life. When you become aware of what's changing, when you're the witness to what's changing, and when you can allow things to change when it's wise, a great freedom begins to emerge. And that's the subject of this talk. I hope you enjoy it. I look forward to being with you soon. The story of a beloved rabbi in this town who's on his deathbed, and he's surrounded by all of his students, and the whole town is present for his passing. And they're all waiting for the final words from this wonderful teacher. And so his bed is surrounded by all of his top disciples, and then kind of in descending order, they're down the stairs and then filling the house and then out to the street where all the townspeople are. The rabbi is coming right to the end of his last breaths, and his top student says, "Rabbi, what can you tell us? What are your final words?" And he says, "Life is a river." And the senior disciple turns to the others, and life is a river. Life is a river. It makes its way down the stairs and into the rooms downstairs, out into the streets. Someone says to a little boy, life is a river. And the little boy says, "Well, what does that mean?" And the person says, "I don't know." It turns, "What does that mean?" And starts making his way back up the stairs, back by the rabbi's bed, finally to the top disciple. And the top disciple says, "Rabbi, you said life is a river. What does that mean?" Rabbi says, "No, maybe it's not a river." It's one of my dad's favorite jokes. So it may be a river, maybe it isn't a river, but it seems to be a flow. There does seem to be a flow. And that's a little bit what I'd like to talk about tonight, how life is a flow, that there is an intelligence that flows through life. I'd like to talk a little bit from the kind of the yoga philosophy, a little bit from the Buddhist philosophy on that, and how that energy shows up in our lives as waves. And just waves of sensation and mood and thought come through. And how quite often we stop or we resist the natural waves that are flowing through. I'll talk a little bit about how to ride the waves when they come through your life experience. And then to talk a little bit about, well, is there anything beyond just waves? And what is it that's beyond the waves? For many, many years when I lived in an ashram, I supervised fasting programs. People would come for a week, and they would either go on to like a mono diet of like greens and rice, or they would do juices and vegetable broth, and go through a whole week of kind of rest and being in that process. And there was so much healing that would occur through basically slowing down what you eat and deep rest and yoga, meditation, paying attention and so forth. But inevitably people would go through these healing crises. Their skin would break out for a couple of days, or they'd have really, really bad breath for a couple of days, or aches and pains would show up and then magically disappear. And a lot of this is simply when the body has time to rest, it can begin to kind of throw off what it doesn't need. There's a whole very powerful cleansing process that occurs when you engage into fasting. And you've read about fasting, and the intermittent fasting is kind of the rage of just by taking time, give it time to rest. It can go through a very, very deep healing processes sometimes. So I was very into fasting, and for many, many months I actually lived in a living foods community.
and where we did nothing cooked over 104 degrees, and lots of colonics. So that was really powerful. If you've ever done a colonic, they have this glass tube where you can watch what's passing through. It's quite fascinating. But quite often you'll see like this ropey material, like plaque on the colon, just being released and ejected out of the body. Someone, when I was down there, she swore she saw the head of a Barbie doll go by during her colonic. But I really view the practice of meditation is like that fasting. You take time to pause and you slow down. Your body reaches more of a sense of homeostasis. And then just like it throws off toxins from the system, you're throwing off toxins of the mind and emotional toxins. Your body gets strong enough to release what's no longer necessary. And it's amazing how intelligent the body is. You know, that when you get a cold or when you get flu, the body kind of knows what it needs to do if you just rest and give it time. And this sense of that healing force that runs through us is just such a topic of fascination for me. Just a little bit from kind of the yoga philosophy model. What yoga says is that the entirety of this existence can be boiled down to two things. In Sanskrit, it's referred to as prana, which is energy, and chitta, which is awareness. And all we're doing is trying to balance prana and chitta. But prana has this amazing capacity when we're aware of the life force, when we're aware of feeling and sensation and aliveness. When we connect with that, generally we feel more alive, we feel more present. When we're usually lost in the mind, comparing, judging, planning, trying to figure things out. And so when we come back to the experience of this breath or these sounds, sometimes there can be almost a revelation of like, oh my gosh, I'm back. So in the yoga model, at least where I practiced for many, many years, we would talk about the technique for awakening the experience of energy is three things, is to breathe and relax and to feel. So when you breathe, you're re-engaging with the body. And then you'll notice, perhaps in your meditation, that the more you relax, the more you can feel. Which is why, I just offer just to be aware of the breath. If you really relax the belly, even more than it's relaxed right now, and you really pay attention, you'll notice how subtly the breath is actually happening down there. So breathing and relaxing and feeling is an integral part of our practice to intimately connect with life force. But we can be intimately connected to the life force, and if we just do that, then we're just sort of like a sailboat without a rudder. And what we need is to pay attention. So the other side of it is to watch, like be the witness of what's happening. And in a sense, if you can allow it, give it room to move. And when we can do that, it gets very, very interesting. Because the more sensitized you become to energy and feeling and moment-to-moment aliveness in the body, the more you become aware of all the fluctuations that are happening. The more you begin to realize that in the aliveness of here and now, you are constantly experiencing and reacting all the time. So how much is actually happening in the moment? There's a really interesting book, hardcore book, if you're interested, called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha, where he talks about noticings per moment. Like how many noticings per moment can you actually have? And I think at one point, this is Daniel Ingram, I said, you want to aim for, I think it was like, was it 10 noticings per second? Like how much can you break down 1 second in your awareness? It's a fascinating thing. But if you just try it on for a moment, if you like, just to close the eyes, this will be just for a minute or two. Where do you feel the breath right now? Is there anything in the body-mind that could relax right now? And on the tail end of relaxing, how much more intimately can you feel into those places that are softening or relaxing right now? And can you feel or sense how the more you soften the body, the more access you have to energy and feeling? And now, can you sense the counterbalance to this? Can you imagine yourself as the witness, observing without judgment, and allowing this moment to be just as it is? How much can you notice over the next few moments? If you like now, you can begin to deepen the breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. This concept of two primal forces of energy and awareness, it's very simple, but I find it to be very, very helpful to tune in to energy and then take that seat of the observer. It's a way of kind of opening to present moment awareness. And what happens is stimulus and response. Something happens when we react. And that's what we become more aware of. And again, that two-part definition I like so much of meditation. It's number one, noticing what's happening as it's happening. But then also noticing your relationship to what is happening. And that's where the freedom piece comes in. Because you get to see your reactivity. And in the seeing of your activity, you can begin to sense you have a choice. Instead of reacting to life, maybe there's a possibility of responding to life in a creative and conscious way. So we're getting messages all the time that are coming through the body. And some we pick up, some we don't pick up, some we ignore. You know, those television commercials, that say, are you suffering from indigestion after eating a gigantic meal over the holidays? Feeling bloated after drinking too much? Take our new improved knock-me-out medicine to make those symptoms go away. I've always been waiting for a commercial that would say, are you suffering from indigestion after eating a gigantic meal over the holidays? Feel bloated after drinking too much? Try not to do that next time. So many signals come through the body. Some we receive, some we reject. And there are so many interesting stories of people who have these symptoms of illness that they ignore, only to find years and years later, because they ignored it, it's now full-blown. And there's real... it's kind of scary if you kind of look under like early symptoms of things, because you can get quite paranoid about it. But at the same time, your body is talking to you. And it's a question of how you listen to it. And an interesting thing is that when you're really practicing mindfulness, aka non-judging awareness, you're training yourself to really turn your attention to what's actually happening, like the truth of what's happening. And that means getting more and more comfortable with discomfort. And this becomes an integral part of the practice, because quite often what arises in our practice is unpleasant. And our habitual, traditional way of dealing with unpleasant is to try to nuke it or make it go away, make sure it doesn't come back. We're also visited by pleasant sensations, and again, habitual ways to try to keep it. And someone was telling me how they were in a store and waiting in line, and they just they turned their attention, to look at something over there, and someone cut in right in front of them, and they felt this a little bit, first irritation, and then the more they observed this person, the irritation turned to anger. And as the anger was rising, they just simply turned it off. And she said later, wow, I was feeling something, and then I wasn't feeling anything at all. And she kind of found a way to sort of turn off the wave of that sensation, which may have been the most skillful thing in the world. What happens quite often is, in life, you're feeling lots of equanimity, life is fine, and then some event will occur. Sometimes it's something external. Something is just internal, a memory. And then the memory will have some form of a clench to it, some kind of unpleasantness to it. And then around that unpleasantness, we start to tighten. And the basic assumption around that clench is something is wrong. Either something is wrong with me, or there's something wrong out there. And the more we kind of hold on to that, the more it begins to build. And it's very interesting just to think of it as a wave. It starts very, very small, but as we resist, the wave begins to build in intensity. And quite often, for many of us, as the wave begins to build and the discomfort begins to get more and more intense, we employ different strategies on how to short-circuit that wave. Quite often, when we feel that discomfort, there can be a sense of we're a little bit out of control. So it's a kind of a fear of losing control. And the 5 classic ways we tend to react is either we spin off into anger, judgment, blame, aversion, hatred, ill will, or we'll disassociate. We just sort of disconnect from the body and kind of go into planning or fantasy. Or we'll disconnect through anxiety and restlessness. We kind of get overwhelmed with the worry or the anxiety associated with it. Sometimes it's like we just pull the plug and we just sort of lose energy, and we kind of spiral into more of a depressive state. And sometimes we get paralyzed. We get paralyzed by doubt. We get paralyzed by self-criticism. Now, sometimes, especially if you're engaging in your practice with real sincerity, the undigested experiences in your life begin to come to the surface. Because again, you're creating this optimal field, just like you're fasting and creating this healing mode. The toxins arise to the surface. Sometimes those toxins can be quite intense. So when something feels too much, feels traumatic, feels overwhelming, it's very, very skillful to turn your attention elsewhere, to explore how you might be with it, maybe with some support. But sometimes, though, you can actually choose to be on the wave, to stay with it. So again, as the information is arising, there's stimulus, response, reaction, resistance. you become more and more aware of the feeling tone of it. We've talked before about Vedana, which is the feeling tone of your internal experience, either being pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and then the reactivity to that unpleasantness. Sometimes it's possible to ride that wave, and I'd like to tell a little story, quite a personal one and quite a recent one. Always seems that when I have a topic, to talk about, I'm visited by something that gives me something to talk about. Last week, my wife and I had our date night, and we pretty much do the same thing. We go for a kind of a nighttime hike. And as we were just sort of hanging out in this meadow where we like to go, it just struck me. And actually, kind of, here's how the mechanism worked. We're just in silence. And my wife's been feeling really good recently, been really, really healthy. And so I was thinking about how great it was to see her really, really healthy, which then, of course, led to the memories of when she wasn't so healthy. And the times when her health was so precarious that I was really aware of just her mortality. And so as I thought about that, I just thought to myself, there will be a time, quite possibly, where we'll be with each other when the other person takes their last breath. And so when I just imagined really being present with my wife in her last exhalation, I just felt this really deep clench inside. And what was interesting was I've had a number of close encounters with death, which have been a real blessing for me. But in one instance, a child who died just 10 days before the due date, and finding out just in the doctor's office that the baby had died, just this sense of utter, it was almost like this searing white light, that I felt. So it was very, very similar to that. And I could feel it begin to rise up inside of me. And then I could also feel something wanting to clamp down on it. And then something inside said, turn to this, ride this wave. And so I just sort of stopped and I relaxed and I just sensed how intimately I could feel it. And it was almost like a really deep guttural cry, just kind of came right up and out of my system. And then a couple of kind of subsequent waves. It felt like it was almost overpowering, but I was able to stay with it. And on the other side, and what's so interesting, if you've ever felt a cry coming on, you know what that's like, is you feel the tension build, and if you stay with it, there's a crescendo to the wave. And on the other side of the wave is something really interesting. It can be as simple as when you cry in response to something, you just feel a release. It can feel like a weather system move through. Sometimes there can be an insight on the other side of the wave. But on the other side of the wave was this really deep tenderness and a really deep recognition of how I want to live my life with my wife as long as we're both here. And I was struck by that experience of the contrast of that something inside me that just wanted to keep it under control. And the contrast with, on the other side of the wave, of just that sense of, I want to really be informed by this truth that one of us is going first. And I want my life to live in recognition of that, just a sense of spaciousness and really deep appreciation. I think it was Khalil Gibran who said, Unless you grieve fully, you will cry, but not all your tears, and laugh, but not all your laughter. And this becomes the invitation in our practice, that when it feels safe to be with something that's uncomfortable, to sense if it's possible to see it, if it feels safe to make room for it, and then to sense how intimately you can be present to it, and to meet it with as much empathy as you can. Because inevitably, certainly what I have found in my life, that on the other side of that release is something almost unimaginable. It's really some kind of a shift in identity that quite often occurs. It's an interesting thing. The neuroscientist Jill Bolte-Taylor's memoir, My Stroke of Insight, she says that the physiological lifespan of an emotion in the body and brain is 90 seconds. The sensations, adrenaline, heat in the face, tightness in the throat, rapid heartbeat, arise, peak, and dissipate on their own. 90 seconds. And what I've noticed for myself is I've had strong emotions. I've managed to extend that 90 seconds into about 45 years. And this becomes the art of really saying yes to what arises. When I lost my beloved dog a number of years ago, and grief is a really good example of waves, because grief comes in rogue waves. As you well may know, that out of the blue, there's a memory, a sound, a smell, and then there's a full-blown memory, and then just this sense of their presence, and then the sense of loss that can follow. So I decided after my dog moved on that my personal practice was that when I found myself on the grief wave, that my goal was to stay on the wave until I couldn't find it. That's how I languaged it for myself. And there is something so powerful about just noting when I'm kind of caught in that memory and caught in that wave, and just saying, I'm on this as long as I can stay on it. And it really was quite remarkable. And now that I think of it, most of those waves were probably about 90 seconds. To kind of just to feel it and stay on it, and then to kind of feel the release. And quite often, the release has to do with gratitude and has to do with presence. So perhaps we can do just a little practice around this. If you like, you can close your eyes. So this is not about trying to conjure up deep grief or loss. But you might take a moment with your eyes closed just to sense over the course of this day or this week, if there's any moment when you may have felt any kind of intensity, a strong emotion or a strong mood. If you can't think of something, you can make something up just for the purpose of the practice. And you might take a few moments just to sense if you can recreate that moment. Can you sense who was there, if there were others around, the time of day? And just recognizing the beginning of the wave. Can you sense the beginning of the wave? Was there any kind of clench, any kind of sense of there's something wrong here? And just to notice that you resist what was there. anger or disassociation or worry or losing energy or doubt. And you might take a moment just to sense if it feels okay to hang out with us for another minute or two. If you were to allow that wave to build, what does it feel like inside? Is there a sense of how it wants you to be with it right now, or what it needs? If you were to hold this in some kind of empathy or kindness, how does that shift anything inside? And can you imagine what's on the other side of the waves of who you are as the one who is aware of what is rising and what is falling? And as you're ready, you can deepen the breath. If you like, you can open the eyes, or you can remain with them closed. So in the stream and the flow of your experience, different waves come and go. Sometimes not. Sometimes there's easy equanimity. Sometimes we think of riding the waves quite often with kind of unpleasant sensation, but actually it's really powerful to learn how to ride the waves of pleasant sensation as well. I'm going to talk in some detail about that. I'm offering a talk in a couple of weeks called How to Increase Your Bliss Toleration Level. But have you ever seen the YouTube videos of little kids being given puppies or kittens? If you haven't, it's just amazing to see what it's like for kids to be given a puppy or a kitten. There's something about just the innocence of it, and quite often they just break down. They're so overwhelmed with emotion, and sometimes they're kind of like dancing in ecstatic joy. And it's kind of fun to see. And there's another set of videos, I don't know if you've seen these, of like people who are colorblind, who wear glasses for the first time that allow them to see colors. It's really, really cool if you have a couple extra minutes. I told you I was off my YouTube ban, but it's amazing to see people they're colorblind, they put in these glasses and they can see color, and you can just see the overwhelm. And then some of you can see how like the wave builds so intensively, and then you can some people like trying to shut it down because it's almost too much for them to feel. And then the question is, well, then is that all there is? Is life just simply waves ebbing and flowing, and all we're doing is reacting to the stimulus? And it brings up a really interesting question of, are we making it happen, or are we just present to it? So there's a little reading that I'd like to offer you. If you'd like, you can close your eyes. This has to do with the nature of the self. We quite often identify with the self who is the one who is doing, the one who's accomplishing, and the one who's making it happen. The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage, you stand in the center of your room or your house or half acre or square mile or island or country, knowing at last how you got there, and you say, I own this, is the same moment when the trees unloose their soft arms from around you. The birds take back their language. The cliffs fissure and collapse. The air moves back from you like a wave and you can't breathe. No, they whisper, you own nothing. You were a visitor, time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming, we never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way around. When we identify with this small doing self who's making it all happen, we fall into an illusion that we're just one little wave cut off from the ocean. When we can begin to sense the sense of I, me, and mine falling away, when there is no I, no mine, no mind, that's when you realize that you're the ocean. And all the waves are all a part of you. So it's about remembering that this human form, this human life is made up of energy. Just this vibrant life force that animates the body, that animates everything around you. And remembering that life flows in waves and fluctuations. And remembering that who you really are is the space in which everything happens. So why don't we close with a short meditation? In your own way, you might just feel the breath. Sense what could relax, and sense how on the heels of relaxation, your sense of feeling can dramatically open. And you might sense the seat of the witness, your capacity to observe without judgment. Your capacity to allow, to be the space in which all things can arise and fall in their own natural way. Deeply relaxed, and yet intimately alert. As you're ready, you can deepen the breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Just close with a few final words, just to remember this. Life is a river. Or maybe it isn't a river. But we do have cookies and tea. So enjoy your evening. Thank you so much. Have a great week.